Hey there, this is a review of the Laowa Nanomorph lenses. Now, all the footage that you just saw was shot on 3 different Laowa Nanomorphs on the red Komodo, and that was all filmed in downtown Durham, North Carolina, which is pretty close to where I live. So before we get into the review, I just have to have a huge thank you to B&H Photo who lent me these lenses to test, review, and share with all of you. I couldn't do a lot of these videos without their support. Now, they didn't pay me anything to make this video, but they just allow me to borrow some gear so I can test and review it. So if you are looking to pick up some equipment, I definitely recommend checking out B&H Photo because I personally buy a lot of my stuff from them. There are always links down in the description for all of the gear mentioned in this video and all the gear that I use on a regular basis. So again, if you're looking to pick up some stuff, I highly recommend you check out B&H Photo. Now, these are all Super 35 1.5 times squeeze anamorphic lenses. And you can see here that I have the 35mm T2.4 and the 50mm T2.4, and I'm currently shooting on the 27mm T2.8 on my red Komodo, and this is all presented in CinemaScope, which is a 2.39:1 ratio. Now, if you have questions about all the stuff I just said in terms of anamorphic lenses and how they work, I did make a recent video about the basics of using anamorphic lenses, so I'll leave that video linked down below. All right, so let me spoil this up front. These are really, really cool lenses. Hopefully you enjoy that intro sequence where I showed off what the lenses look like in a more run and gun, nighttime shooting situation, checking out the flares and all that kind of stuff. I think they looked really cool. But let's do some more controlled testing here to take a look and see more of the characteristics of these lenses. And for these tests, I shot them on the Canon C70. So as I show you these video clips here, take a look at the image quality, how well the lenses match with each other, the bokeh. We'll also take a look at close focus and focus breathing. Overall, I would say the image quality is great on these lenses. Like I said before, I think these lenses are fantastic. So all those clips that you just saw were shot on the C70 in C-Log 2 and then graded by hand without any color adjustments made. So you can see any differences between the lenses in terms of colors and all that kind of stuff. But overall, I think the lenses are pretty sharp, they have good contrast and colors, and they produce a really pleasing image, and I think they match each other pretty well. Now, in terms of the bokeh, I also think it looks really nice. You get that classic anamorphic bokeh. So you got those nice oval shapes with the 1.5 times squeeze. You can see this outside with the oval shaped bokeh with the light coming through the trees behind me. And also in the nighttime shot, you can see that the out of focus light sources are an oval shape. But it overall just gives you a really pleasing classic anamorphic looking bokeh, especially with that 1.5 times squeeze. In terms of the focus breathing, I would say it is pretty normal for these lenses because the anamorphic lenses tend to breathe, and that's part of the character of the lenses, so nothing out of the ordinary there. Next, let's take a look at the flares. And anytime you're talking about anamorphic lenses, the characteristics of the flares are super important and part of your decision on which anamorphic lens you might want to go with. Now, most commonly when you get an anamorphic lens, it will have a blue flare, but now there are some amber flares available too. Now, these nanomorphs come in 3 different flavors. They come in silver, blue, and amber. So as you can see here, these are the silver editions, and you can also, as I said, get it with a dedicated blue or amber. Now, what's interesting about these and why I wanted to try these is with the silver flare, it actually takes on the color of the light source. So it's not always gonna be blue or it's always gonna be amber. So right now, if I hold up this flashlight here, this is a white light, and you can see it's white or kind of bluish. And if I change the color to blue, you can see it's a blue streak. And if I change it to green, you can see it will produce a green streak or red. So as you can see, it's really cool because the flares on these lenses take on the color of the light source. So let's take a look at the characteristics of the different flares on the 3 different lenses. Starting out with the 27mm lens, you get that classic horizontal flare, not many vertical flares, it's a little bit more controlled, but you get this really cool pattern that I was calling like an eyelash flare. I don't know what it's called, but it kind of looks like eyelashes to me. So got some really cool character to it. And next, looking at the 35mm lens, again, classic horizontal flare, a little bit of extra ghosting and vertical flaring, and you also get that eyelash flare again. So really cool. I wouldn't say it's over the top, but you know, is really pleasant and gives quite a bit of character as you would expect with an anamorphic lens. Now onto the 50, I would say it has a lot more going on than the other 2. You see a lot more of the vertical flares adding in and just a lot more ghosting and extra layers of the flare going on. So a lot more character with the 50. So taking a look back at some of the nighttime shots that I showed you earlier on in this video, this clip here with the car, you can definitely see the horizontal streak, but also that eyelash flare, as I was calling it. A lot of character, really cool. And then this shot here with the cars on the street, you get all sorts of different flares going on. So when you push these lenses pretty hard in terms of strong light sources, you can definitely get some funky flares. Now, overall, I'd say they have a good amount of character without going too far over the top, and I think they're kind of a good middle ground. Again, the 50 had a lot more characteristics than the 27 and the 35. Next, let's talk about the build quality and design of these 2 lenses. Now, the 27mm, which I'm shooting on right now, is very similar to these 2 lenses, but taking a look at the 35 and 50, of course, these are fully manual lenses, but you can see that the gearing is built in, and it's also in the same location for the focus and the aperture. So if you have a follow focus setup, it's really easy to switch out lenses because they're in the same location. Of course, the 50 being a little bit longer than the 35. Now, one of the coolest features of these lenses is the fact that they are so small, nanomorph, right? These are small lenses. And part of being so small is it's great because when you're packing away a few lenses, it keeps your kit really small. Also, when you put on your camera, the whole package is a lot smaller. And the fact that they're small just makes them fun to use. So overall though, not just, you know, they are small, but they are really well made and they have a little bit of weight to them considering their size. They have an all metal build construction and they're just really well made. And as I said, really fun to use. In terms of the gearing on this, the focus is really nice and smooth. I really enjoyed pulling focus on this. The one thing I'd have to complain about though is the aperture, I think is a little bit too loose. I wish it was a little bit stiffer. I don't do aperture pulls very often while I'm rolling. And so for me, I'd rather it be a little bit stiffer and a little bit, you know, I can bump this a little bit easier and change the exposure. So I wish this was a little bit stiffer, but overall very, very smooth and nice to use. Onto the back of the lens, it has an all metal lens mount with no weather sealing. And then onto the front of the lens, we have a 55mm filter thread. So these are the RF mount versions of these lenses, and they were great, of course, to test out on the Komodo and C70 and some Canon mirrorless cameras. But what's really awesome about the Nanomorphs is they're available in pretty much every mirrorless mount. So in addition to RF, you can also get it in Sony E, L, Nikon Z, Fuji X, DJI, DL mount, and also Micro Four Thirds. So pretty much whatever you want. They also come in a slightly larger version and more expensive, but you can use it for EF and PL. Now on to price. So at the time of recording this, the mirrorless ones are selling for $1,000 each and $2,700 for the set of 3. Now, any anamorphic lenses for $1,000 or less, I consider to be a budget anamorphic lens. And even though these are $1,000 or $900 if you buy the set, they look and feel great and produce a great image. I think there's a lot of value in these lenses and they're really fun to use and it's really easy to pack away a few in your kit. They're also coming out with a 65 T2.4 and an 80 2.4, so it'll be even more of a complete set. So if you want to start investing in the Nanomorphs, just keep in mind there will be other lenses coming out that will fill out that set. All right, so who are these lenses for? I think they're for anyone that is just looking to get into anamorphics or maybe pick up a fairly affordable but yet really solid set of anamorphic lenses. As I said before, they're 1.5 times squeeze, which is fantastic on a 16:9 sensor. So after de-squeezing, you'll get a ratio of 2.67 to 1, which if you're putting in a 2.39 to 1 cinemascope, you just crop it a little bit and you have a little bit of wiggle room to shift the image horizontally. Comparing this with a 1.33 times squeeze, you get a little bit wider of an image and you get a little bit more of the anamorphic characteristics. So having 1.5, I think, is awesome for a 16:9 sensor. Now, these are designed for Super 35, so they're great on any APS-C or Super 35 camera. So like I said before, I was using this on the Komodo or C70. It's also great on the Komodo X, Sony FX30, Fuji cameras because they'll have crop sensors. Now, if you have a full frame camera with higher resolution and it has a crop mode, you can set it to crop mode and then put these lenses on those cameras as well and get a really nice image. So plenty of cameras from like Lumix, Canon, and Sony, you can put in crop mode and still use these lenses. Overall, I really like these lenses and I have to send them back to B&H, but I'm seriously considering buying them because they're super cool and they're a lot of fun, and the images, they're just fantastic. So links in the description if you want to pick them up. Big thanks again to B&H for letting me test them out. Big thanks to you for watching this video. Please hit subscribe if you're not already, and we'll see you in the next one.